Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about how your attachment style relates to your mother. Now, you may have heard about the different attachment styles, such as the anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Now, what I want to explain in this video is specifically if you were raised by a narcissistic mother and how this relates to your current attachment style. Now, our mothers are supposed to nurture us, and if we gain that nurturing, we would by default have a more secure attachment style. However, if we were the byproduct of a bad toxic relationship, or if our mother was traumatized in some way while she was even pregnant with us, that can affect the bond that we have with our mother from the word go. Now, you can imagine the effects if after we were born, our mother was affected in some way, like a mental illness, abuse, or addictions. As a byproduct, we'll also be affected. Now, some mothers don't purposely intend to disconnect from their kids. And like I mentioned earlier, a cause of this could be that she's going through abuse, being a single mother, maybe unworking, illnesses. All of these things can cause her not to be able to meet their needs on a consistent basis. Now, I know that the majority of people that watch my channel are women, and I just wanted to highlight this because most of the time, if we're in a toxic or abusive situation and we have kids, we aren't conscious of the fact that we're not meeting our kids' emotional needs, and this creates an anxious, fearful attachment style in them. And I'd also like to add that on a whole, I'm speaking to both sons and daughters of narcissistic mothers because gender doesn't matter, the effects are the same. It's just that we don't often see men come forward to admit they're experiencing narcissistic abuse as much as women do. Now, the first few years of life determine how secure we are in adult attachments. Our attachment styles are directly related to the attachment we had with our mother. In order to form a healthy attachment with our mother, she needs to be able to meet the primary needs of an infant, which are mainly to feel loved and secure. If an infant can depend on their mother, that infant then develops secure attachment to the mother, which equals secure attachments in adult relationships. Now, when the infant can build trust that the mother will meet their needs on a consistent basis, this trust carries over into adult relationships. So you can see why having that secure foundation is so important in the beginning, because this is what everything else is built upon. Now, if a mother fails to meet the infant's needs on a consistent basis, adult attachments become insecure. There's difficulty trusting people and that they'll stay with them in adult relationships, and they will naturally have abandonment issues. And they'll attach to their partner in an anxious way or an avoidant way, or even both. Now, with the anxious attachment style, the infant had their childhood needs met on an inconsistent basis. The child didn't have security and trust that the mother would be there, and this transfers into adult relationships. They need more reassurance from their partner because of their fear of abandonment or loss. They feel unworthy or not good enough. They have thoughts like, if I was good enough, maybe they wouldn't have left. Now, this all comes from the painful assumptions that we made as infants, like our parents didn't care or love us or feel anything about us, really. Now, with an avoidant attachment style, the infant did not get their needs met at all in childhood, and as a consequence, they didn't attach to their mother at all. Now, there might have been many factors which contributed to the mother not being there for her child, as I mentioned earlier. Now, growing up, I had an anxious attachment style because my mother was a malignant narcissist. I was also abandoned at a very young age, so I normalized these experiences and expected them of everyone around me. I would unconsciously attract people with avoidant attachment styles because it's what I expected, what I was used to and programmed to accept. Now, in order to break that pattern, I had to go deep and really work on my self-concept and reprogram my subconscious mind to replace those toxic self-beliefs. Now, it's well documented that if there is an attachment wound, the mother is the cause of it. All adult psychological issues have a mother wound at the core of them. Now, personality disorders and mental health issues, codependency, all of those things result from an infant-mother disconnect. Now, this is not a blame game, but at the same time, I'm never going to condone that sort of behaviour. Now, your mother probably inherited her disconnect from her mother, and her mother probably inherited it from her mother. And it's literally a generational wound. Now, I can say this is true of my mother, and in hindsight, I was able to recognise that she treated me the way she did because of her avoidant attachment style. she inherited it from her mother. She didn't know what she didn't know. She had no self-awareness whatsoever. Again, never an excuse, just an observation. Now, I do want to mention fathers too, because whether present or not, their role is to nurture the mother, to help fill her up with the energy that she needs to look after her kids, and that so she can be more available to her children. And going back to what I said earlier about certain circumstances preventing the mother from attaching to the child, here's an example. If the father is, say, abusive, then the mother is so busy trying to survive herself, physically and emotionally, that by default she doesn't feel like she has anything left, and she can't be there consistently for the child. And this causes the child to grow up with an anxious or avoidant attachment style, or both. Now, you may be able to look back on your life and recognize a pattern of this dynamic in your past. Now, the mother wound becomes our core wound and a core belief when we grow up this way. So if you have beliefs that you're not good enough, you're not worthy or lovable, they all stem from the mother wound. And in the same way we become disconnected with our mother, we can also become disconnected with adults when we grow up in relationships. So the depth of disconnect with people and relationships determines the depth of disconnect we have as an adult. Sorry, the depth of disconnect we had as a child determines the depth of disconnect in adulthood. Narcissistic personality disorder, or BPD, are directly related to the infant-mother disconnect. So if you were wondering how a narcissist became one, there's a reason. Narcissists either have an anxious or avoidant attachment style. However, the majority of the time, narcissists have an avoidant attachment style. They can have an ambivalent attachment style, which is a combination of both, and the narcissist can swing between the two. Now, narcissists generally avoid emotional attachment. They can attach on a physical level, but they don't seem to be able to genuinely bond on an emotional level. And the reason is because they can detach without a thought, and really there's nothing for them to detach from. People often say that they never knew the narcissist, the reason being because there was nothing genuine for them. Now, to someone with an anxious attachment style, this kind of behavior can be really triggering, as there's already the existing worry and fear of being abandoned. When we're in a relationship, we can unconsciously transfer all the anger and that pain from our initial childhood wounds onto our partners. Because of what we're experiencing, it's normal to think that our pain is coming from that current relationship. But what's happening, more likely, is that the relationship is just triggering our already existing childhood wound, so our pain point is being triggered. That's what's happening when your mother has become a narcissist. Now, most daughters or sons of narcissists wonder how the mother could be so cruel. What they're actually witnessing is all of their unresolved anger and pain. Now, if they refuse to acknowledge and get help for it, they'll naturally project it onto the closest people to them. Now, people with an anxious attachment style suffer, I feel, more than the avoidant, because the avoidant literally cuts off emotionally from their parents at a very young age. Because their needs weren't met as a child, they basically give up on their parents and cut off emotionally. They become numb. And all the anger and rage towards their parents just stays buried beneath the surface, and it's repressed. And what happens is it's transferred to their adult relationships as either aggressive or passive aggressive behavior. I always highlight to people recovering that they need to pay attention to the initial cause of their wound, the child bond with their mother. They also need to become aware of the attachment style arising from that bond. And if they are having counselling, that they need to look at those two things and address them. I just want to give an example of how a narcissist can reinforce an anxious or avoidant or fearful attachment style. For example, the narcissist gets upset with you or accuses you of doing something you never did. Then that results in them giving you the silent treatment, for instance, and that triggers and resurfaces the beliefs you have, like, I'm always abandoned, I'm unloved, I'm not worthy, people always leave, I'm going to be left on my own, I'm a burden to others, no one wants me. This reinforces all of those root beliefs that came from that childhood trauma or childhood neglect. Many people coming out of narcissistic abusive relationships usually identify with the anxious attachment style, but can also identify with being avoidant. When they feel like their needs aren't being met, sometimes they can just take a few steps back to just assess things, to protect themselves, and also tend to their hurt feelings. So they can have an ambivalent attachment style. This is part of the reason why being with a narcissist is so painful. If we have an anxious attachment style and are constantly getting involved with avoidant people, then we'll be in a constant cycle and state of fear, neediness, anxiety. And now I'd just like to add that because you have an avoidant attachment style, or you may have one, it doesn't automatically make you a narcissist. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I change things? How do I rewire or change my attachment style, or is it even possible? I just want to bring the attention to this: self-love and your self-concept, how you love yourself and how you really see yourself on a subconscious level. It's so important to care and nurture yourself and to heal those core wounds of shame, guilt, low self-esteem and unworthiness. I have a video on my channel that ties everything together, and it's called "This May Be the Last Narcissistic Abuse Video That You'll Need." I think it's called that. And it goes deeper into the importance of your self-concept and why that is at the root of everything we experience. When we heal at a deeper level, we are actually become repulsed by toxic dynamics. And if we are with an avoidant, or we're in the process of recovery, we'll just basically end things because the dynamic is no longer attracted to us, and it's no longer something that we will actually sustain or feel like we can sustain or even tolerate. Now, letting go of someone who is constantly provoking your anxiety, letting go of them, that will bring you peace and that will bring you healing, and you'll recognize that. Now, people with avoidant attachment style, they do need to get serious recovery help and work done. And they need to identify the source of their wound, because they tend to suppress those feelings of anger and resentment. They need to release the pain of not getting their childhood needs met. They need to find a safe, secure person that they can open up to and feel vulnerable with and express their fears, and find someone who can hold a safe space for them. And obviously therapy is very important, but it's important to work with someone who not only specializes in narcissistic abuse, but they also understand attachment styles. So it's important to know and understand your attachment style so that you can not only change it, but specifically also if you have kids, because again, it's a pattern, recognize how that might impact them and how you can stop that pattern from repeating. It's never too late to come into that awareness and choose to change things for the better, so you and your kids don't repeat the same cycles over and over again. Now, that might mean you go into therapy or counseling, or with your kids maybe. I know of a few parents who have come out of abusive relationships and had counseling and also have it with their kids, which has really helped. So in a nutshell, guys, in order to address your attachment style, it needs to be addressed at a subconscious level, okay? Only then will you see long-term results. Remember, because this attachment style came from a very, very young age, it's programmed. So you need to change that program. So I hope this helped you if you were ever unsure or confused or overwhelmed about the subject of attachment styles and how they came to be. Put your comments down below, guys. I'd love to hear from you and answer your comments or respond to them. I'll speak to you on the next video. Take care.